Is Australia a racist country? G'day. Recently in Australia we had a referendum called The Voice. Now, I avoided making a video about this beforehand. I thought about it and decided no. But the question, if I can stick to the actual topic, is Australia a racist country? Now, no thanks to the media around the world, they have portrayed this referendum as more or less as how the average Australian is racist towards the Indigenous people, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people. And honestly, that is not the case in most circumstances. Now, with the referendum we had, without going into details because there would be too much to unpack, which is another reason I couldn't do an unbiased video, because there's so many sides of the coin to look at.
It's very clear that reconciliation is dead. A majority of Australians have said no to an invitation from Indigenous Australia with a minimal proposition to give us a bare say in matters that affect our lives.
Generally speaking, the country just didn't want a division, I think. And neither should there be, of like Australian race A and Australian race B. The fact is, if you're an Australian citizen or someone from overseas with permanent residency, you are Australian. You get all the benefits that Australians do. You also pay the penalty if you break the law. I personally don't see why there should be a division widening whatever gap there may already be. And I think that that's probably the biggest reason this referendum didn't go through. As you can see by this chart, hopefully, Australia is a vast mix, and has been for many, many years, of people from all nations and countries. So we're actually quite highly regarded in the way that we do all get along. The results, anyway, were a resounding in all states except for the Australian Capital Territory, a no vote. The average was about 60% no versus yes. In some states it was as high as nearly 80%. And I think the majority of people, the reason wasn't that, we're racist. It's because a lot of people thought the actual proposal, of which there wasn't any stipulations what people were voting on, itself was racist. In other words, more or less creating a greater division than there ever really was for a long, long time. Now, yes, on both sides of the debate, if you want, they've accused each other of lying in their campaigns. I won't give my opinion on that, but yeah, I'll withhold my opinion. Now, anyway, the point is, the way the media portrays the stories that happen in Australia, this has, for example, given the impression that the majority of Australian people didn't want the Aboriginal people to have any say. Don't get that wrong at all. There are several, if not more, bodies that do listen, for want of a better word, to what the Aboriginal community wants, or at least some of the community. Because many people that voted no against the referendum are actually Aboriginal people. So it's a complex issue. I'm not going to discuss that. It's just that the media likes to portray the worst things. It's the thing that the media does best, and always has. They portray the worst in every country, every story. They're great at that. Please ignore the wood chippers in the background. That's part of Australia too sometimes. I'll take a serious note, without delving into it, what's going on over in Israel, Palestine, Gaza. That's a terrible thing. Now, all across the world we've seen protests on both sides, Israel, Palestine. But of course, what made the world media was the few seconds that some complete dickheads, and yes, we have dickheads in every country, carried on with in their protest at the Sydney Opera House.
Anti-Semitism on the steps of an Australian landmark. This protest has been widely condemned by political leaders and police, and they insist they won't let it happen again this weekend.
I mean, that was just so vile, so terribly anti-Semitic. That is not how the majority of Australians feel at all. But of course, a bit of infamy is bad infamy sometimes, because that's now created the impression, unfortunately, in some people's heads in other parts of the world that Australia is like that. Well, we're not. Back when I was a little boy, there was a term that, I'd hear that the older people use, new Australians. What that meant for them, and it was usually said in a non-offensive way, referring to someone that was Greek or Italian back then. So, yeah, not all terms are meant offensively. I haven't heard that phrase since I was a little boy, which was quite a long time ago now. I've been waiting for the opportunity to say this at the right moment for quite some years. I pretty well believe that everyone is at least a little bit racist. Now, why do you say that, Steve? Well, be honest with yourself. You can say you're not racist, and you may believe that you're not racist, but if there's a group of different people, take them from all around the world, different colours and everything, different religions, I won't delve into that, what I'm thinking about specifically, who would you tend to hang out with more? Does that make you racist? I mean, if you're looking at the real core of the meaning, is it racist to feel that way? Now, I've mixed with just about everyone in the world and had great conversations with everyone in the world in my time. Do I think that everyone in Australia gets along with everyone else? Not necessarily. I mean, we have these groups, and there's a religious group that I'm thinking of. You all know who I mean. And you do tend to think, well, whenever there's trouble around the world, they tend to be there somewhere. But that's not necessarily the case. What we see on the media, you see extremists, extreme left, whatever. That doesn't mean that everyone's like that. Take what's happening over in Palestine, Israel at the moment. I'd like to think that at the core of it, everyone just wants peace. And yes, probably there is hatred on both sides. There's hatred in so many different countries. Ukraine, Russia. But the majority of the average people, as I said on my recent live stream, just want peace. They don't want the war, they don't the politics or the terrorist groups that organise this crap. They're the ones to blame, not the actual average person. So is Australia a racist country? I would say no more than the average country. We get along with everyone pretty well. And anyone that's, doesn't, a lot of the time they're really old people now that still harbour, grievances towards the Japanese and Germans for World War II. Mate, you weren't even alive back then. That might have been in your grandfather's day. The world moves on. Would I personally like to see less of certain races in the country? Probably. But not so much the races, it's the people that can't get along with everyone else. Like the religion I'm thinking of, that a lot of people supposedly say, my first priority is to my religion, and down the bottom is following Australian laws. Well, sorry buddy, you're in Australia, you follow our laws. If I go to another country to visit, I fully expect and do comply with all the laws that I'm aware of. Certain countries don't allow alcohol on the streets. Most countries don't. And if you're that desperate to be drinking all day long, should you really be somewhere else? Do it at home. Surely you can carry a bottle of water rather than a bottle of whiskey. Because I think you might have bigger problems than just that. Anyway, I hope I've got this across as unbiased as I can. you're welcome to come over if you're willing to get along with everyone else and not be an extremist. I hate making this sort of videos, so I will return to my normal content in due course. Cheers.